I don't know about you guys, but I already learned a lot in the last 2 hours about consumer behavior, about science, about the fascinating new products that we have already tasted or are about to taste. And actually, I learned a new German word during the break. Jochem taught me the word Aufbruchstimmung. Is that something that the Germans can recognize after these first 2 hours? Yeah? So let's add something to for the non-German speakers. It means that it's really a buzz going around here. That's we're all heading towards this more healthy and sustainable future, and that we're all willing to take a share on that. Aufbruchstimmung, nice word. Thank you, Jochem. We'll add to that, and we'll do so by the presentation of this man, Dr. Matthias Moser, the CEO of Hydrosol, producer of stabilizing and texturizing systems for the food industry. And you had a good quote that I want to repeat here before I give the word to you. You say, you believe that food technology is one, if not the key technologies and future industry of the 21st century. Take it ahead.
So true. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction and the opportunity to speak here. Ladies and gentlemen, from the known to the unknown, I guess we all agree in this room at least that the future food base will be, to a large extent, and has to be plant-based. Nevertheless, when it comes to the details, we have to admit that there are a lot of questions. What will it really look like? I mean, plant-based, okay, but what will it really look like? We at Hydrosol, and also me personally, by the way, we are convinced that attractive meat alternatives are in a position to build the bridge towards this plant-based future. And as we are experts in texture, taste and texture, and we heard several times today that one of the big challenges will be providing good taste and texture for these products, I believe that some of our perspectives can really provide some relevant insight for all of you. So at the end of the day, why is it so difficult to move the society towards the plant-based food base? The arguments are convincing, sustainability is strong. Nevertheless, we have, and this is perspective number one, to accept der Mensch ist ein Gewohnheitstier, or in English, old habits die hard. We all know that food has a lot to do with tradition, with experiences, with, I have to click, okay, habits, and food is pure emotion. The tastes of our childhood really shape us and make us feel happy when we find them back at a later stage. Despite that, there's a lot of interest out there, and we heard it several times today already, in alternative concepts. So when we look at the Innova Market Insights Top Trends 2019, there are 5 trends which are, or 5 of the top trends which really reflect that the consumers are open to new experiences and willing to explore plant-based food. I guess several presentations before strengthened this view. So there is interest, but then when the consumer goes shopping, what is the reality out there? To be honest, the reality is like that. It's disappointing, so the products are not really attractive yet. There are some good products out yet. It improved a lot in the past, but nevertheless, for the average consumer, and it was said in the speech before, we should not forget we are here a quite selective group of people which have a lot of interest in the topic. But for the average consumer, globally, and we have to get the average consumer, these are not yet the products we would like to have. So one conclusion here is he is interested, but when he goes out, tries to find good products, he does not get what he wants. And, by the way, it's very often still expensive. Now here. Okay, now second perspective, still with the question, why is it so expensive to move society towards the plant-based? Well, one thing is maybe that meat consumption is to some extent in our genome or in our genes, in our DNA, because during evolution, meat consumption probably was one of the biggest evolutionary advantages. We know that the brain has grown parallel to meat consumption, higher percentage of meat in the diet, especially when it grew above 20%, the brain grew faster compared to plant eaters. Lactation phase is shorter, and meat consumption leads to a better supply of proteins and therefore essential amino acids. And finally, the historical intake, what we also should not forget, was at certain times at least significantly higher than 50%, especially when no plants were available during winter, drought, etc. So just as an idea or as a perspective, maybe it's indeed deeper in our DNA than we all might believe. So there is this natural hunger for proteins, and as a matter of fact, today very often the answer to this hunger for proteins is meat, because meat is available, meat is established. We heard meat is cheap like it never has been before. So when we look at the recommendations of the German Nutrition Society, the recommendation there is that we do have a significant protein demand, even though we heard that there might be some oversupply. Nevertheless, the recommendation is that 1 gram per kilogram body weight per day should be proteins. So that means that 9 to 11% of our food intake has to be protein. And of course, this even needs to be higher during pregnancy or lactation. And what that leads to, when meat is the only relevant protein source, we saw in the presentation of Ms. Rüssler before, at the end of the day, we eat a lot of meat, we eat too much meat, and it's, as we all agree, not a sustainable way for the future. And everything will get worse, as we know, with the global growth of population. I mean, that's a no-brainer. This will also lead to growth in meat consumption. You all know these figures. I can really keep that short. Anyhow, it has to mention that even from this perspective, there's almost no alternative out there to change the nutrition base for the, mankind towards a plant base. A topic I would also raise, and that's perspective number 3. We should not forget completely that, proteins are still in the positive part or the positive list of the basic nutrients. Nevertheless, they also play an important role in tackling one of the biggest challenges we face. We should not forget that, forgetting about sustainability for a moment, that the obesity epidemic is one of the biggest challenges for Western societies. And, when offering plant-based solutions, we must make sure that the protein content in these solutions, when completely switching to plant-based, is as high enough as satiety is related to protein intake, and satiety is the driver of body weight management. Consumers want to have veggie alternatives, we shared it before, but for real satiety, a significant protein content is required. So in that sense, we see that we somehow have to bring together protein in plant, or the protein contents in plant alternatives to what the consumer expects. So that were 3 perspectives. One perspective was indeed the interest is there. Nevertheless, the products need to improve to really get access to the general market. Secondly, we have this challenge that we have to match somehow what is in our DNA. This is the hunger for protein, so we have to offer proteins also when we build up a plant base. And finally, the satiety and body weight challenge, which also can only be met when offering plant-based solutions rich in proteins. So now again, what have we seen so far? We need plant-based food products that match the consumer's expectations regarding good food, that are appealing to the consumer, that are healthy, and finally that provide protein and essential amino acids in sufficient amounts. Now, what are the options when we look from here to what we can offer to match these requirements? So there are different concepts around, and one is for sure, and we heard it before, the legumes, or as I say, beans, beans, beans. And why do I say beans, beans, beans? Of course, they contain a significant amount of protein, and it would be lovely if we all would only eat beans or legumes in the future, but is that really realistic? Well, I don't see it. So first of all, the taste and texture diversity is massively restricted. And secondly, maybe less severe, but of course, the indigestible carbohydrates, of course, cause bloating and flatulence. So not everybody loves to eat beans as the main protein source. So yeah, somebody said it before, would be great if we would all eat legumes in the future, but let's be realistic. Is that the answer to the global protein and plant-based challenge? We don't look at it like that. Then nuts and kernels, and we just heard in the presentation of Caroline that the Simply V product portfolio is built on this. Nevertheless, we should also see there that there are some restrictions. So the nuts and kernels are high fat content. The fat in nuts is healthy, but nevertheless, there's a high calorie content, and there's a certain allergic potential. So we should not forget that this is maybe a partial answer to the challenge we see, but it's not the general answer, especially as their processability is limited to some extent, that the products are expensive. We never should forget food always has to be affordable if it wants to be successful in the general market. And finally, we believe as a conclusion that nuts cannot be the full answer to the challenge we face, but always only a partial solution because of price, availability, and the arguments mentioned here. Another alternative, the insects. Well, true, the black soldier fly contains up to 55% of protein, and it would match the challenge. Nevertheless, there's, from my point of view, but I'm sure we will hear more about it during this event, there's no sustainable production concept yet established, because we should not forget food waste, which is often mentioned in this context, can simply not be used for the production of insects. And so I still have, or we do have some question marks there. And let's not ignore it. For enthusiasts, this is fantastic, but in the broad society, again, there's still a certain feeling of disgust when thinking of eating insects or worms. Then, look at the headline. I still refer to it as science fiction. Alternative protein source coming from cell-based meat. Well, the protein content is like meat and significant and relevant. Nevertheless, there are also some questions. You all know that it's still very expensive, that I would not know the sustainability balance. I'm excited to learn more about it, but I would see there are still some question marks, bigger question marks. And the biggest question for me is, well, when will it become reality? I mean, that's a topic which is quite fancy and a lot of talk about it, but when is there really the potential to provide food for billions of people on this planet which are used to eat today meat and are hungry for proteins? And then science fiction part 2, that is products like these synthetic food concepts. It's just an example here, of course, but my question here is, forget about indulgence. Is that really what we believe the general population will accept? And is that our proposal for everyday eating in the future? Come on, that cannot be our honest answer to this challenge. So at the end of the day, our answer from Hydrosol is that we are really convinced that the consumer will find the answer to these questions, to the challenge, to the fact that he's used to certain kinds of food products, to the compatibility of the food to existing food chains, that he will find that in products which are, like you see them here, which are familiar and appealing, and thus invite the consumer to enjoy them. So we are convinced that meat successors, I love the term, and we learned it earlier today, this is indeed much better than meat analogs, are the right answer to the global challenge to turn the consumption into a plant-based food base. And we also dare to quote ProVeg here, because it was them, or at least one of the team members, Alexandra, who said, bad vegan products are the enemy of a plant-based nutrition. So let's face it, we have and we are obliged as food producers to offer solutions to the market which are acceptable to the consumer. The consumer will never eat what doesn't taste well, where the structure and the texture is not good. I mean, maybe in this room we believe they will still be convinced by evidence or other arguments or data. Nevertheless, crucial for food is the taste. And when products do not taste good, at the end they will not make it to a success in the market. So properties and advantages of the meat analogs we offer to the markets. Of course, we have diverse plant protein sources in our portfolio, so we are very flexible there and can work together with you in developing the product of your desire, of the market desire, based on a high, broad diversity of protein raw materials. We can adjust the protein content in a certain range so that at the end of the day, the protein requirement for people who fully switch to plant-based nutrition will be met. We can offer fat-reduced varieties where the trans fatty acids and the short fatty acids are reduced. We can offer solutions with or without food additives. So we know that is a very crucial question, a very sensitive topic. But of course, at the end of the day, according to our conviction, the main driver should remain to establish a more sustainable food chain, where at the end of the day, if certain food additives are of help, we should not completely refuse it, to not put the bigger picture at risk. We can work with allergen-free solutions, of course, except when we talk about the soy solutions due to being part of a bigger food group. We can also offer vitamin solutions to balance out the vitamin deficits which may be associated with a fully plant-based diet. We can offer products which match to the existing food supply chain. So when we think about food convenience, we should not forget more than 50% of the people in Germany have lunch in a canteen. So we also have to find solutions which can be offered in canteens. Otherwise, we will never get a breakthrough in the mass market. So our products are fit or are fit for the existing food supply chain. They are known and familiar. And at the end of the day, we would like to conclude with one last slide. The global hunger for proteins will increase. I guess this is almost the headlines of one of the headlines of this event. The rising demands can only be covered with proteins derived from plants. Plant food has to provide proteins in an attractive way. Don't forget it, it has to be attractive. Otherwise, it remains an esoteric niche topic, and that's not what we all aim for. Alternatives to meat and dairy products are able to build the bridge to possibly completely new product categories in the future. We don't know what the future will look like from the known to the unknown, but we believe that with the kind of products we do have in our portfolio, which are existing in the market, we offer a fair option to build the bridge towards the future. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm available for some of your questions.
Yes, indeed. We have time for 2 questions. Somebody, please stand up, state your name and your organization. Let me hold the mic, please.
Hello, my name is Robert Woodall. Represent a company called The Meatless Farm. We're a startup in the UK. My question was just, what's your sense for the outlook for soy? We talk about some products we're seeing out of the US dropping soy out, but it's still a very efficient way of delivering protein. Just be interested in your perspective.
No, actually, you express my opinion. It's a very affordable source of plant-based proteins, and I guess it will be very difficult to provide a global food supply based on plants completely without soy. I mean, on top, we should again not forget about affordability. In this vegetarian and vegan domain, it's often forgotten that still for most societies and countries around the world, the price is the most crucial property of a food product. And that's why we always have to be very careful that what we offer is affordable and can be well afforded by the average consumer. In that sense, soy will, from my point of view, despite some of the critical issues raised, always be an important part of the diet.
What was the name again of your startup?
The Meatless Farm Company.
The Meatless Farm Company. Fascinating. Did you know, by the way, that the person over there is also a start-upper, and he's called his company the New Milkman. So we have the new farmer, we have the new milkman, just sitting just beside. Okay, great. Okay, let's see. One more question over there.
Stefan Wilke from Green Food 50, also located on the campus of Wageningen University. Thank you very much. We heard a lot of things that might be not, in your opinion, feasible to quench the thirst of the market for vegan products. And you said the new products need to be more attractive. I agree on that, and I see the products that Hydrosol can provide, but I did not really see what is the disruptive and new idea how to end up with the products that you provide into these attractive products. Is there also a business unit inside the company structure that is focusing on really new innovations that you can bring to your customers, like an idea?
Yeah, actually, we consider ourselves as the idea creators or future makers. No, innovation is for us an important topic. So maybe our products, which I presented on one of the last slides, are lookalikes to what exists in the market, but actually the texture properties are much better compared to what is existing in the market. So when looking to established meat successor products, we provide products which are better in texture and then very often also in taste. And when we think of completely new concepts beyond meat successors, I'm actually open to learn what that might be. We think about it a lot, and always when we think what the food chain then might look like, well, we conclude it will be either extremely expensive, or it will be something which is so far away from the reality right now that, okay, maybe we can find or form a pool of people who believe to develop that, but we need to join forces to bring these new concepts to the market. You know? I mean, you are the protein pope of the Netherlands, I understood. Maybe you have better ideas what the real new future food base could look like. But
well, I do know that at industry at this moment, with respect to meat successors, one of the big challenges is perhaps one of the holy grails is to use binding agents which are fully plant-based, but which have the functionality of chicken, egg white. As you may also know, chicken, egg white is a very, because of the production method, it has a high environmental impact. So that could be, do you in fact have a plant-based alternative for chicken, egg white?
Yes, well, I mean, maybe not 100% match, but we have binding systems which indeed allow to glue together particles of different kinds, be it vegetables, be it meat and vegetables in combination, to have hybrid products, or also for meat solutions. Nevertheless, yes, we have such binding systems.
That could be one. That could be one.
Yeah.
Last big hand for Dr. Matthias Moser. Thank you.